My uncle worked in Antarctica for 15 years. Before he died, he told me what they found under the ice. The phone call came at 3:33 a.m. My Uncle Desmond's voice was barely a whisper, broken by wet coughing that sounded like his lungs were tearing apart from the inside. Adrian, they know I'm dying. They've stopped watching me. I can finally tell you the truth about Vostok. He paused, and I heard machines beeping in the background, the sterile sounds of a hospice room. But you need to come now. Tonight. I won't make it to morning. I was in my car within 10 minutes, driving through empty Seattle streets toward the address he'd given me. A private care facility I'd never heard of, despite visiting him regularly for the past 8 months. The building looked wrong when I pulled up. Too isolated, too heavily secured for a simple hospice. There were cameras everywhere, and a security guard at the front desk who checked my ID 3 times before letting me pass. When I finally reached Desmond's room on the 4th floor, I found him propped up in bed, looking 20 years older than his 63 years, his skin the color of old paper, and his eyes sunken but burning with an intensity I hadn't seen since I was a child. Close the door, he said before I could speak. Lock it. We don't have much time, and what I'm about to tell you will sound insane, but I need you to listen to everything before you decide I've lost my mind to the cancer or the morphine. He gestured to a chair beside his bed where a thick manila envelope sat waiting. That contains copies of everything I managed to save. Photographs, documents, seismic readings, transcripts of communications that were supposed to be destroyed. I've hidden the originals in 5 different locations. I sat down slowly, picking up the envelope, feeling the weight of whatever knowledge it contained. Uncle Des, what happened in Antarctica? You've never told me the real reason you came back. He smiled, but there was no humor in it, only a deep weariness mixed with something that looked like relief. I came back because they made me leave, and I never went near ice again because I learned what's underneath it. What's been underneath it for longer than humans have existed. He reached for a cup of water with shaking hands, took a sip, and began speaking faster, urgently, like he was racing against time itself. February 8th, 2009. That's when everything changed. We'd spent 14 years drilling through the East Antarctic ice sheet, working toward Lake Vostok, this massive body of water 3.7 kilometers beneath the surface, sealed off from the world for 15 million years. Desmond's voice cracked, and he coughed again, bringing up something dark into a tissue that he quickly hid from my view. We broke through the ice on February 5th. I wasn't there. I was in New Zealand at a conference. While I was on stage showing slides, my team was 3 kilometers below the surface, pulling up water samples from a lake that should have been pristine and untouched. He paused, his eyes focusing on something I couldn't see, some memory that still terrified him 15 years later. They pulled up something else with the water, something that made 3 of the drill team claw their own eyes out within the first hour, something that made 2 others cut their wrists with the broken edges of sample containers before anyone could stop them. I felt my mouth go dry. What did they find? Desmond reached over to his bedside table with trembling hands and pulled out a photograph, old and creased from being folded and unfolded countless times. He handed it to me, and I looked at what appeared to be a grainy image of a water sample container, and floating in the murky liquid was something that made my brain hurt, trying to process its shape. It looked like metal, but the geometry was wrong, angles that seemed to fold into dimensions that shouldn't exist, surfaces that were simultaneously reflective and absorptive, a structure that my eyes kept sliding off because they couldn't find a stable point to focus on. That's one of 12 artifacts that came up in the initial sampling, Desmond said quietly, and that's the smallest one, the one that killed the least people. I stared at the photograph, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. This can't be real. This has to be doctored. Some kind of optical illusion. Desmond laughed, a sound like breaking glass. That's what I said too, until I saw them in person, until I felt what they do to you just by being near them. They emit something, Adrian. Not radiation or anything we have instruments to measure. They emit information, vast quantities of data being broadcast continuously, and human nervous systems aren't designed to receive it safely. He took the photograph back from my hands, which I noticed were shaking now. The drill team. These were experienced researchers. Within 2 hours of exposure to these artifacts, 5 of them were dead by their own hands, and 2 were vegetables. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Just being near them drives humans insane. He pulled his hospital gown aside slightly, and I saw his chest, covered in marks that looked like burns, but arranged in geometric patterns, the same impossible angles I'd seen in the artifact photograph. These started appearing about 6 years after I left Antarctica, but they're not random damage, Adrian. They're maps, coordinates, instructions. He leaned forward, gripping my arm with surprising strength, his eyes wide with terror. And what he said next made me realize my uncle hadn't been dying from cancer at all. The rest of the story is linked below or on my channel.